Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Martin? Richard?
Yes, Nick, I can hear you okay.
Oh, that's good, thank you.
No problem.
If I do that, can you hear me now?
Yep, loud and clear.
Right.
Like that.
The dog's barking, I'll see what she's barking at.
Hello, Lorcan.
Hi there, Nick.
Hello, Lorcan. Hello, Martin. Hello, Richard.
Yes, Nick, I can hear you. I can hear you loud and clear.
Councillor Cope, if you mute your microphone.
Please be seated. Thank you. Right, good evening, everybody. And here we are back in Charter Hall. But this will be the last time, won't it? So obviously, I've got some safety announcements to, here we go. All written out. I'll probably divert from it a little bit, but I'm chairing the meeting today. I'm Councillor Robert Davidson, the Mayor of Colchester. This meeting is being broadcast live over the internet and on the Council's YouTube channel, and will also be available to watch afterwards. I want to confirm that all of us present in this room in Charter Hall are adhering to the latest government guidance. I can assure those watching that the meeting room is set up to meet social distance requirements. Whilst we are not wearing masks while seated, these will be worn if and when we leave our seats. We have undertaken a COVID risk assessment for this meeting. There are a couple of housekeeping matters. Should the alarm sound, please evacuate using the nearest emergency exit and assemble at the skate park. Leisure World staff will be on hand to direct you. If necessary, we will look to have breaks at approximately 90-minute intervals. We also have 3 councillors who are joining remotely via Zoom. I confirm that while they can participate in the meeting, They will not be included in the votes or not allowed to vote, and only those councillors present are able to vote. I'd like to now invite my chaplain, Reverend Amanda Elms, to say a prayer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and a good evening to everyone. Let us pray. As we meet together this evening for this full council meeting, we thank you for giving us gifts and skills which we may use in the service of this great borough. Please guide us through your Holy Spirit, that wise and informed decisions are made for the benefit of our community this evening. Help us to discuss the issues before us with courtesy, truth, and mutual respect, and grant that all who are representative of this community and its people will seek to serve the common good through him who came not to be served, but to serve, Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. We say together the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Thank you very much, Reverend Elms. You're welcome to leave or stay as you wish. Thank you. Yes, so we have apologies for Councillor Coleman, but no other apologies. Are there any others? Nope, looks like a full house then. Excellent, apart from the 3 on Zoom, who I haven't got a screen in front of me, but I presume somebody has. Oh, okay, there I am. So they will come up on the screen behind all of you. So you won't see it, but I might. So, oh, okay, great. Thank you. I've got some rather sad news to impart to start with, and that is that early last week, Alderman David Holt died. He'd been poorly for quite a while, and his wife Marie was at his side when he died. They haven't managed to give us any official notification of that, but I have had it confirmed by one of the other aldermen. He was mayor in 1978 and 9. He was also a councillor for 18 years, I believe. He was very keen on finance issues, so he was on the policy panel, which at that time was men only until Alderman Fulford changed the rules. So I've been informed, Nigel. And he was also on performance review, which I guess was something like governance and audit is now, and also on the establishment committee, which is presumably a property committee. But anyway, he served us well over 18 years, and he was made an alderman in 2008. So we'd like to have a minute silence, I think, for, if you'd like to stand, please, for David Holt. Right, thank you very much. So have we got any declarations of interest on items on the agenda, please, from anybody? I see no hands. No, thank you. And we now got have your say. We have three members of the Is it 3? So yes. Thank you. Yes. Thank you. So we've got Catherine Spindler, Michael Spindler, and who will, their statement may be read out by Richard Clifford for us. And then we have Mr. Alan Short in person, who will be speaking about Alumo developments. Yes, what a good idea. Wonderful to have support here. Mr. Short, as you're already here, would you mind taking the microphone now, please? And you, oh, over there, sorry. You have 3 minutes to speak, and there will be a bell at 2 minutes and to warn you.
Good evening. This isn't so much a question, more a sort of a statement of concern and a point to make. Condition 15 from the alumno appeal was one of the key conditions concerning the ramp from Priory Street over the wall to the site to be used by disabled and others. The planning committee considered several proposals as to how to solve this problem and condition from the planning office and rejected all of them. They sent them away and asked them to come back with another one that met the British standard. However, the planning officers chose not to come back to the planning committee, but to exercise their powers to determine conditions in these particular circumstances. What they've determined is something which meets the slope requirements of the British standard, but which is still inherently unsafe. There is a blind corner on this 4 zigzag ramp where you will not be able to see who's coming at you from the opposite direction. There is inadequate spaces to pass. The ramp goes across a staircase, which is completely open, which would enable anybody to veer off and fall down there and make it impossible for blind people to use a handrail to come up. So it is inherently unsafe. The planning committee never considered it. And what happened was the planning committee officers signed this off on the 6th of May this year. Some of you may remember the 6th of May. You may have been here half the night. But that was election day when there was no council. My view is that on this application, which there were 900 objections, it should not have been handled in the way it was handled. And that given that it is inherently unsafe, any serious accident there can only be the responsibility of those who made the decision.
Thank you very much, Mr. Short. We will take strong notice of your concerns. I believe the matter is being discussed by the Cabinet, so we can't actually comment on it today. But yeah, thank you for alerting us to the problem. And now, Mr. Clifford, we could have Miss Catherine Spindler's contribution.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Catherine Spindler's contribution takes the form of a question as follows. With the increase of cycle lanes and promotion to cycling, and following on from the previous Liberal Democrat-led administration, who committed to utilise empty shop premises in town to use as a secure cycle lock-up facility, can you please advise what progress has been made to provide this much-needed facility?
I'd like to invite Councillor Crowe to respond, please, as the relevant portfolio holder.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I'm glad the question was asked because this is something that I've been pushing for some time now. Too many bicycles get stolen in the town centre, never to be seen again. And I'm one of those one of the masses that went out last year during the first lockdown and bought a brand new bike, which I've ridden as often as I can. And unfortunately, I've never had the confidence to leave it in the town centre on my visits there, even though I bought a sturdy lock. So what I'm pleased to say is that there will be a secure cycle store in the near future in the town centre in Portal Place off Sir Isaac's Walk. It'll be the same little precinct where the BID have their office, and we're just waiting for planning permission before we can make an announcement. So watch this space.
Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Clifford, we can hear from Mr. Spindler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and similarly, this takes the form of a question too. Like many other residents living near Middlewick, I am delighted that the proposal, initially proposed by Sir Bob Russell, whom I have been delighted to meet and support, to protect Middlewick from Abbots Road to the hedging and direct building away from this area of significant beauty. Can you please reassure all of us living in this area that you will deliver on your promise to create a nature reserve stroke park at the Abbots Road frontage to the hedging, and liaise with Essex Wildlife Trust and the Woodland Trust to ensure protection now and for future generations? Thank you.
And I believe, Councillor Ellis, that comes under your portfolio. If you'd like to respond, please.
It does. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you to Mr. Spindler for the question. I too have spent quite a considerable amount of time discussing Middlewick with Sir Bob on a number of occasions. His views and mine are pretty well aligned on this, and I'd love to promise not to have any development on the ranges themselves and the land along the Abbots Road frontage. You'll be aware that my group did not vote to include Middlewick in the local plan. But in fairness, our issues were originally around infrastructure and traffic rather than the ecological issues, which have now become very apparent. The site has within it a designated wildlife site and priority habitat with European protected species. It's one of the last significant remaining pieces of undisturbed lowland dry acid grassland, once widespread across the region, and it's a valued green space much used and loved by local people. So what I will say is that we are exploring all avenues for creating a country park and or nature reserve at Middlewick, and I think all ideas to achieve that should be considered. Mr. Spindler will obviously know we're currently awaiting the inspector's letter regarding section 2 of our local plan, at which point we will know whether the site has been allocated, and that will influence the options that we have. We do promise to work closely with what is becoming an incredibly well-informed and organised community, which I applaud, to achieve the best possible outcome that we can. Personally, I've spent many happy hours of my childhood on the ranges. It sits on my side of Colchester where I live, and I empathise enormously with the people who hold it dear, and we will use our best endeavours to give them the best outcome we can from what is obviously a very unhappy situation, but not one of our making. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that comprehensive reply, Councillor Ellis. That concludes the Have Your Say section, and we now move on to the minutes of the previous meeting, which is motion A. And I would like to move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 26th of 2021 be confirmed as a correct record. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Right, and then we have Mayor's announcements. Again, because of COVID, it's a relatively short list. I would just say I had a very pleasant day at the barracks, at Merville Barracks yesterday, with the Paras, 1st, 2nd and 3rd Battalion, and lots of senior Army people, including lots of previous heads of the Army were there. General Mike Jackson, I think, and other people. Prince of Wales was in good form, and there were 2,000 people invited, nearly all of them Paras, friends and family. So actually they all mingled and had a good time catching up with each other. They were presented with new colours, of course. The last ones were given to them about 20 years ago, and there's now new battle honours to be put on the new colours. So yeah, the Army is a very important part of our town, as you know. The other one to say is that obviously the oyster opening is on September the 3rd, You should have all had an invitation sent to you by email on Friday. I'm afraid there's only 42 places, so not even all the councillors will be allowed to go. So there will be a ballot. But if you could respond sooner rather than later, at least then you'll know whether you've got a place or not. And that'll be leaving from Brightlingsea, well, from the town hall on a bus or Brightlingsea Hard on Friday the 3rd of September. My rearranged civic service is now going to be a harvest festival because it's that time of year now. And that's going to be on September the 26th, which is a Sunday in Peldon Church. And again, you'd be more than welcome. There is room for all the councillors at that. And there'll be some buns and refreshments afterwards, of course. The other thing is on the 24th of this month, I've got my charity garden party. We've got about 150 people coming so far, but there's lots of room for more. We've got plenty of tentage, so people will be reasonably distanced, and even though there's no need for it. And there'll be, if the weather's inclement, there will be tents to cover under. But generally, after a few drinks, most people start dancing on the lawn, whether it's raining or not. So you'd be very welcome to come to that. And I think that's all the announcements I've got currently. Thank you. So we now move on to the next item, which is items referred to under the call-in procedure, and there are none of those. So we then have one recommendation from Cabinet panels and committees, and that's 7.1 Financial Regulations 22-23. And I'd like to invite Councillor Willits as Chair of the Governance and Audit Committee to move motion B. Up to 5 minutes, Councillor Willits.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the recommendation contained in draft minute 260 of the Governance and Audit Committee meeting of the 22nd of June be approved and adopted. The Council is required to adopt the financial regulations as part of its annual budget process. And I'm acutely aware that the regulations are something of a specialist interest, Mr. Mayor, and many councillors would probably prefer that we move smartly onto the motion about the future of the town centre. A debate I sincerely hope is more productive than the last big debate on the town centre in 1648 between the Cavaliers and the Roundheads, which destroyed most of the civic buildings and blew off the roof of the Norman Priory. Indeed, anyone who's read the council financial regulations lately may well believe that they have not been revised since that fateful day in 1648. But in fact, the last revision was in 2017. Nevertheless, I would suggest that a substantial update is now overdue. And the proposed changes are placed before you today in good time for preparation of the budget for the years 2022 to 23. I should explain that the financial regulations are a component of the Council's governance framework. This contains policies and ethical rules and guidance and the approach to monitoring internal controls. Together, they ensure that the Council operates in an efficient, transparent, and flexible manner to the benefit of the taxpayers. The new draft for adoption today is set out on pages 31 to 67 of the order paper, and in particular, I draw your attention to the new limits for budget transfers set out in section 8, financial limits. The committee has approved 68 amendments summarised in section 6 on page 23 of the order paper. The old regulations did not correctly reflect the Council's budget process. The Council now adopts an integrated budget approach based on strategic objectives rather than individual portfolio holder budgets, which hark back, Mr. Mayor, to the pre-year 2000 committee system, I think. The revised regulations incorporate an extension of the medium-term financial forecast from 3 years to 4 years, which is very sensible. It deals with the requirements that certain activities are now being carried out by the amphora companies instead of the Council, but must be collated into the group consolidated statement. The new regulations require a clear process in regard to capital expenditure, putting more emphasis on proven business cases for every capital project, together with the rules for management of those projects throughout the year. The new regulations also take account of the fact that the Governance and Audit Committee now receives the monitoring reports on revenue, capital and treasury items instead of sharing this responsibility with the scrutiny panel. The final area to which I draw Council's attention is the proposed change in relation to budget transfers. Council is asked to substantially increase the ceiling on budget transfers made by Cabinet and directors because there's been no uplift for many years. We note, however, that the vast majority of budget transfers are what we call technical transfers carried out by the head of finance. For example, allocating pay awards or setting up new cost centres when we receive generous external grant funding from government. The use of budget transfers by portfolio holders or directors is in fact very infrequent. Mr. Paul Cook, the responsible financial officer and Section 105 officer, agrees to the changes and confirms that he is happy for the budget transfer limit to be raised to double that of the current amounts to take into account the passage of time. At Governance and Audit Committee, the revision was supported by all political parties. Otherwise, Mr. Mayor, I would not have brought it forward to Council today. In future, the financial regulations will be reviewed on an annual basis by the Governance and Audit Committee. I am convinced that this annual spectacular will bring delight and merriment to the heart of every councillor and general rejoicing throughout the borough. I apologise to members for the length of my report. I appreciate Council is itching to get stuck into the other motions on the monarchy and the possibility of more platinum Jubilee bank holidays, and the motion on why footballers who are earning in a week more than twice what most people earn in a year, yet parents are scared to take their children to top division matches. But the financial regulations are, in my opinion, equally important to those measures. With that said, I commend to Council the changes set out on the order paper. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You filled your full 5 minutes, Councillor Willits. Do we have any other speakers on this item? In that, no. In that case, can we agree that it's approved and adopted as written? Great. Gosh, you're so supportive tonight. Thank you. Right, we now come on to item 8, which are motions, which can go on for up to 18 minutes in total. The first one we have is unlocking the potential of Colchester's High Street and Town Centre, and I believe that's Councillor Fox. But first, I have to announce that the subject matter of this motion relates to an executive function in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 11.2. The motion would stand referred to Cabinet. However, I will now invite Councillor Fox to move the suspension of Council Procedure Rule 11.2, which would enable the Council to debate this motion tonight. Councillor Fox.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that Council Procedure Rule 11.2 be suspended to allow for the motion on unlocking the potential of Colchester's High Street and Town Centre to be debated and determined.
Thank you very much. Does anybody object to that? Well, forgive me, if there's an objection, I have to take it to the vote. Yes, so it'll be a named vote. No? Oh, we're allowed hands, okay. All right, so can we have those that are supporting the...
Mr. Mayor, could we go for a named vote, please?
2 people.
2 seconds.
Second that.
Thank you. Right. Thank you. We'll now have a named vote. So, Mr. Weavers will read your names out.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Barber.
Against.
Against. Councillor Barton.
For.
For. Councillor Bentley.
Against.
Against. Councillor Bourne. Councillor Bourne not here. Councillor Burrows. For. Councillor Buston.
Against.
Against. Councillor Chapman.
Against.
Against. Councillor Chillingworth.
Against.
Against. Councillor Chua.
For.
For. Councillor Corey.
4.
4. Councillor Cox.
4.
4. Councillor Crowe.
Against.
Against. Councillor Dundas.
Against.
Against. Councillor Ellis.
Against.
Against. Councillor Fox.
4.
4. Councillor Gocher.
4.
4. Councillor Goss.
4.
4. Councillor Hagan.
Against.
Against. Councillor Harris.
4.
4. Councillor Hayter.
Against.
Against. Councillor Hazel.
Against.
Against. Councillor Hogg.
4.
4. Councillor Jowers.
Against.
Against. Councillor King.
4.
4. Councillor Laws.
I'm a bit rusty on procedure, so I'm going to abstain.
Abstain. Councillor Leatherdale.
Against.
Against. Councillor Lilly.
4.
4. Councillor Lissimore.
Against.
Against. Councillor Loveland. Against. Councillor Luxford Vaughan.
4.
4. Councillor McLean.
Against.
Against. Councillor Mannion.
Against.
Against. Councillor McCarthy.
4.
4. Councillor Moore.
Against.
Against. Councillor Nissen.
4.
4. Councillor Beverley Oxford.
Against.
Against. Councillor Gerard Oxford.
Against.
Against. Councillor Philip Oxford.
Against.
Against. Councillor Pearson.
4.
4. Councillor Scordis.
4.
4. Councillor Scott Boutell.
4.
4. Councillor Tate.
Against.
Against. Councillor Willits.
Against.
Against. Councillor Wood.
Against.
Against. Councillor Julie Young.
4.
4. The Deputy Mayor.
Not voting.
Not voting. And the Mayor.
Not voting.
Not voting. Thank you. The results of the vote are 19 for, 24 against, 3 abstentions. The motion is lost, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Councillor Fox. It will be referred to Cabinet, and you will have a chance to have your say on that matter there. Thank you. We now move on then very swiftly to the second motion, and that is the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. So I'd like to invite Councillor Crowe to move motion D for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the motion on the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, the details of which are at page 3 of the supplementary agenda for this meeting, be approved and adopted. I wanted to propose this motion because the past year and a half has been so tough for most and brutal for so many. There can be few in this hall who don't know someone or were a degree of separation from someone who's been taken from us by this terrible virus. We've been separated from our loved ones, our friends and colleagues, including colleagues in this room, and many have lost their livelihoods. The virus denied us simple pleasures like meeting friends for a coffee or a drink, a trip to a museum, or an evening spent at a concert or at the cinema. The list is endless. Although it's not quite over yet, there is light at the end of the tunnel. However, in spite of the incredible success of the vaccine rollout, I would still urge that we must all remain vigilant and cautious. However, in recent weeks, the country celebrated with the England football team on their amazing journey to the final of the European Championships on Sunday, and clearly demonstrated that there's a pent-up hunger to enjoy ourselves again and to have something to celebrate. So what better to be looking to celebrating the Queen's ascension to the throne and her Platinum Jubilee next year, along with her consistent devotion to the country, to bring us together as a council and a town. So I propose that as Britain's first city, with its unique past and heritage, which has played an important role in the country's history. In addition, we've enjoyed many proud years as a garrison town playing host to the British Army. Therefore, this council is delighted that next year we will be joining the nation to celebrate Her Majesty the Queen's Platinum Jubilee to mark her 70 years on the throne of this great nation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. We have 3 people who have indicated to speak. Councillor Chillingworth first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It really is with great pleasure I speak in support of this motion. Over the years, Colchester has made great efforts to celebrate important events in our national life. Just 3 years ago, our people came together to remember the end of the Great War. We made special efforts to celebrate the Queen's silver, golden, and diamond jubilees. For her to now reach the 70th anniversary of her succession is such a special achievement, we must do her proud. I was 14 when I watched the Queen's coronation. It was the first time I'd seen television. Our farm had no electricity at that time, so we were invited by friends to watch their television. Black and white, of course. It was a dull, rainy day, but to see the state coaches driving through London was one of my best memories. The Queen has been part of our lives ever since and has done so much for our nation, from giving informal advice to successive prime ministers based on her vast experience, to helping to create the Commonwealth Organization, enabling these diverse nations to work together, in my view, one of her greatest achievements. She is respected and loved by people all over the world. No doubt the people of Colchester will have their own ways to celebrate, but what should the council do? No doubt there will be many suggestions, but to start the ball rolling, and without knowing the practicalities, I have three. Creating an avenue of suitable trees down the high street, installing a fountain in Castle Park Lake, and planting a maze in Highwoods Country Park. Mr. Mayor, I support the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Lilly next, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, this is a really good idea. I think that it's never going to come around again. It's a fantastic service that the Queen has done for this country, and you can only admire her for the way that she's done what she's done. She's a fantastic job. And if you've watched The Crown, you've seen how she gave up so much to be the Queen. Her life, basically, and is her life. So as it's such a special occasion, I believe that the council should, and all of us should celebrate the Jubilee in every area of the borough, in that the council provide money for a street party to be held on her behalf, and also for the council to provide a commemorative mug given to every primary school children to remember this occasion and for that to come, because they'll probably outlive the Queen and they'll have something to remember by. So that's a brilliant way to celebrate the Queen's Jubilee, by giving them something to remember. I appreciate Councillor Chillingworth's ideas, sounds great. And as you've stopped free speech on the High Street thing, pedestrianise the High Street and put the trees in there would be even better achievement, and I'm sure the Queen would love that. But that's my proposal, Mr. Mayor. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Scordis, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And again, just to speak in support of this motion, it comes as a surprise to some of my group because I'm not a royalist, I'm a Republican, but I also respect people who serve their country. And I don't believe there's anyone out there who has served our country with more grace, dignity and dedication than the Queen herself. She's an inspiring figure for everyone. And I know that the people of Colchester will love this. And to echo much of what Councillor Lilly has said, I think it would be excellent if communities could participate in their own street parties, whether the council can waive the fee for closing streets, and we can help with health and safety and so forth. The idea of mugs is very good as well, Mike. So some excellent ideas there. What we did a few years ago for the centenary of World War I, we set up a task and finish group. Perhaps something similar along these lines we could look at. So be really good to see what we as a council can do to go further on this motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. I'd like to invite the Deputy Mayor to speak, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I also support the motion in as far as it goes, and we're already hearing how much further it could go. I guess I'm in pole position to have the honour and privilege of being Mayor of the Borough during the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, which will be a huge honour. And I do think Colchester really needs to make the most of it. And so we're already hearing excellent suggestions from Councillor Chillingworth, Councillor Lilly, and Councillor Scordis. So, I think we do need to add flesh to the bones of Councillor Crow's motion. We will be joining the nation to celebrate Her Majesty the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. We need to work out how big's the budget allocation going to be. I think Councillor Scordis' suggestion of a working party or a task and finish group is a really good one, cross-party, and I think that would be a very good idea. Speaking on behalf of the residents of Greenstead Ward, I think they would very much appreciate a street party or any other event to go on, because there is great admiration for the work the Queen has done over 70 years in my ward, and I'm sure that goes for all wards of the borough. So yes, I think Councillor Crow has set the ball rolling. We need to add to it and come up with a really, let's make Colchester the focus, certainly in this region, if not in the country, of doing our best to mark the Queen's remarkable achievement of 70 years on the throne and make the Platinum Jubilee in Colchester a date and a time to remember.
Thank you very much. And yes, you will be in charge by then, Tim, and wish you well. 4 days of merriment. I can just hear it now, see it now. I would just say from my own perspective, of course, the Queen acceded to the throne on February the 6th in 52. And actually we should be marking that as well. Obviously in February the weather's not conducive, but it's certainly very good for tree planting, for example. So I'd like to think that the council could, or the cabinet would consider marking that accession. Thank you. We have more speakers. So we have Councillor David King.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the motion, Councillor Crow, and I thank colleagues who've spoken since for rounding this out in the way that I think we would all agree it needs to be. I love the idea of public memorial, something that stands test over time. I love the idea that we make it personal within the streets of the borough. And I love the idea of celebration and a party, who doesn't? I think the best of the recent England run at the Cup, the best of it, showed us how we can join communities together by focusing on more than us. And the Queen is an extraordinary public servant who sets an extraordinary example. So I personally and my group, I'm sure, associate ourselves with the essence of the motion and the celebration of the Queen's reign. I'll make one request only, that when we get to the long list of things we will do, that mugs are not reserved for children, but for senior citizens as well. Thank you.
I didn't realise you'd qualified, Councillor King. So Councillor Chua next, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As all of you realize that I came into this country from Malaysia in 1971, and I don't know if any of you are aware of the sovereign system in Malaysia. In Malaysia, a king is elected every 5 years, and the king is king of Malaysia for 5 years, and then all the other sultans and the other, what they call king of the states, then go, and elect among them to be the king for another 5 years. As you know, I support this motion, and will be great to celebrate the Queen's platinum, and all parties, all kinds of things that we can think of to celebrate and memory her years that she has been with us and serving the country and the people. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
And Councillor Fox next, please.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I welcome this motion, and it's a fantastic opportunity for us all to be able to debate it this evening. And I, want to put on record that I also value the Queen's service over the 70 years of her reign over the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth. And I look forward to us all celebrating this unique event next year. I would hope that there will be an opportunity for all areas of the borough to benefit from funding that the administration will be putting aside for the celebrations, and that we wouldn't just be decorating the town centre with flags and bunting, but flags and bunting should be available for all communities to use, whether they're decorating parades of shops and community spaces, and welcoming communities to have street parties, as has been mentioned before. And I really think that particularly in our most deprived communities, that the council should be providing funding to support those events so that all our communities can celebrate this important event. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Fox. And certainly when we saw the English football team success, the whole country, I think, ran out of banners and flags and everything else. So this council needs to get its order in earlier rather than late. We now have Councillor Scott Patel, please.
Thank you. A lot of what I was going to say has already been said, but it's a point of clarification, because at the last policy panel meeting, the leader of the council came and he said that he wanted this to be debated by the policy panel. So I'm not quite sure which route we're going down, task and finish or policy. And I'd also like to echo what Councillor Young said. I think it's vitally important that we know what the budget is beforehand so that we can cut our cloth, etc., etc. Oh, and by the way, I fully support this motion.
Good, thank you very much. And finally, Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'm very much supportive of this motion. Lots has already been said, and I agree with everything that's been said so far. Extremely proud to be a part of this motion and to support it at the end. I remember as a young child, Mr. Mayor, the pictures that my mother and father had of me as a child when the Queen and Duke of Edinburgh came through Harwich Quay. And there's a picture of me on my father's shoulders near a railway track as the boat came in, as the Britannia came in and the Queen came. Now, I don't remember much about that. I was only young, but the picture still is in my mind and it's been with me all of my life. As Councillor Scourdus says, quite rightly so, the dignity and grace that the Lady Queen has demonstrated through all of her adult life to do the job that she was decreed to do, you cannot fail to give admiration for that. So we've got to support that. But again, I echo Councillor Young and Fox's words and Councillor Scourdus' words about bringing it to the people of all the borough, wherever you live, to ensure that we can all play a full and proper part. And on behalf of Councillor Warnes, Councillor Martin Warnes, Chris Pearson and myself, we would love to make sure that the Beerchurch residents are on side with you here and do everything we can to celebrate this very, very special occasion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, it's encouraging to see so much support for such a long and beautiful service. Councillor, would you like to sum up, please? You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Well, I'm so pleased to hear the enthusiasm in the room for celebrating the Jubilee next year. It was good to hear Councillor Chillingworth's and Councillor Harris's early memories of the Queen, and it reminded me of one of my early memories, the Silver Jubilee, many, many years ago. And the Queen has been a constant in my life ever since. And I do like some of the ideas I've heard, trees, fountains and the maze, and Councillor Lilly was talking about mugs, which I thought was a particularly good idea to give children a keepsake. I've still got my Silver Jubilee mug hidden away at home. And so Councillor Fox was talking about flags and bunting in all communities. And yes, we want all the communities and cultures to celebrate in their communities and to come together as one greater celebration, which Councillor Young was alluding to, saying, let's make culture the focus for the celebrations. Let's do something big and special, and we will sort out the budget and we will come up with a plan and we'll work out how we're going to do it. We'll work out where we want to go and how we're going to get there. So let's make it the best imaginable celebration that we can possibly have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we now have a vote, and I suggest considering the agreement across the parties, we probably have a hand vote, if that's okay. So all those in favour of the motion? It's unanimous. Yes. I'm sure the Queen will be delighted. So we now have an extra motion, number 3, which is going to be introduced by Councillor Scordis. Up to 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I move the motion, I need to make a slight amendment if people are happy. It is the 3rd paragraph. Before England football team since 1966, it should say male England football team, as I was very remiss to miss out the achievements of the women's football team, who have kind of put the men's team to shame in recent years. So is the council happy with that amendment? Excellent. In that case, Mr. Mayor, I move that the motion on, as amended on England football team, the details of which are at pages 3 to 4 of the supplementary agenda for this meeting, be approved and adopted. I've always believed that football is one sport that people of all backgrounds can unite around. We saw the rise of interest when Colchester got promoted to the Championship, and Ipswich saw the same unity when Ipswich got promoted to the Premiership at the start of the millennium. In the good times and the bad times, fans stick together. In Colchester, we're extraordinarily lucky to have the Colchester Community Football Team, who do fantastic work promoting sport and inclusivity to children in the borough, no matter a child's ability. There is no doubt that this football team united the country in what has been a terrible year for many, in a way that no England team has united people before. And it wasn't just getting to the final that created this unity. It was the team itself. A manager who is eloquent, professional, decent, and always willing to take responsibility for his actions. It's players who, rather than getting into the papers for the wrong reasons, are focused on helping their community and inclusivity. From Jordan Henderson working with Premier League players to raise 20 million for the NHS, to the charity work that goes under the radar, to many of the players delivering food, PPE and supplies during the height of the pandemic. And let's not forget Marcus Rashford, a young, tenacious man who intervened to tackle food poverty and still says he will not stop until no child goes hungry, taking into consideration his own childhood. He has even taken it a step further by working with a charity to provide books to underprivileged families. These are people who could take their enormous wages, keep their heads down and live a comfortable life. However, they've stepped up to the plate and led from the front. Their work has inspired thousands of children to help others. I still remember a little girl that came to the Go For Cafe on the Wreck to donate her pocket money to a family that needed help after seeing Marcus Rashford on TV. They exemplify all that is good in England and Britain: diversity, a social conscience, a sense of fairness, community spirit, and patriotism. That brings us to those racially abusing and attacking England players after our defeat in the males team's first Euro final in history. And it was not just England players being attacked. There were several instances of Jewish people in London being abused on the underground by so-called fans. This represents the worst of England: anger, ignorance, selfishness, and hate. It's an England we like to pretend no longer exists, but it's still there hiding in the background, waiting for such events to express its anger. It's a small part of society that wishes to divide us. It's a small part of society that deserves to be condemned to the history books, and it will fail as long as good people speak up. Sadly, John Barnes, the ex-England footballer, predicted what was going to happen on Newsnight only a few weeks ago, saying if a black player made a mistake, we would see racist abuse. Instead, we saw 3 black players miss a penalty and all face the most vile abuse. Only a year ago, Gareth Southgate said we need to look at ourselves as a nation when it came to discrimination, and how right he was. The reaction from the players to the abuse has also been astonishing, as the team and manager united around each other. Harry Kane as captain and as a white player made it clear that these people making the abuse were not proper fans and that their behaviour was disgusting. While Marcus Rashford, one of the recipients of the worst abuse, showed himself to be a fine example to the country again, tweeting, "Humanity in social media at its worst. Yes, I'm a black man and I live every day proud that I am. No one comment is going to make me feel any different. So sorry if you're looking for a strong reaction, you're just simply not going to get it. I'm not sharing screenshots. It would be irresponsible to do so. As you can imagine, there's nothing original in them. I have beautiful children of all colours following me, and they do not need to read it. Beautiful colours that should only be celebrated. We know that people doing this are a vile minority, most hiding behind a keyboard like the cowards they are. However, I believe it is important that we as councillors show that we oppose all forms of discrimination and abuse, as well as thanks to our players who I know brought so much happiness to the residents of Colchester, including many who have never taken an interest in football before. From my previous work with Hope Not Hate, the biggest cause in the rise of discrimination was the failure for people to challenge and speak out against this type of language. We as councillors owe it to our residents to speak out and set the example and make it clear that any discriminatory language is not acceptable in our borough, and that no matter your race or background, you are welcome in Colchester.
Thank you very much, Councillor Scordis. I should have mentioned, of course, that this was accepted as an emergency motion. It wasn't submitted early enough to be a proper motion. So therefore, I agreed with the other groups that we'd have one speaker from each group. So the first one is Councillor Barber, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Scordis for bringing this motion to council. I do feel it's an important issue to raise this evening, in large part, and more than anything, because there will be people who we all represent who will have seen terrible abuse over the last few days, will have seen, I'm sure, and received terrible abuse for, things such as their race and their religion, and it's intolerable. I think the abuse that came out of such a wonderful occasion was deeply disappointing and horrifying, to be frank. And I think as elected representatives at any tier of government, we should be calling out such intolerance wherever we see it. And the problem is that with social media, with the internet, it is relentless now. Anonymous people can hide behind their keyboard and send abuse permanently. The social media has brought wonderful access to celebrities and our stars, and we've seen some great work done by footballers and other sports and other high-profile individuals on important causes, particularly over the last 15 months. And we've seen, unfortunately, over the last few days, the worst side of it, where people can relentlessly send abuse to people because of their skin color or their race or their religion. And I was deeply horrified to see that over the last few days. And as Councillor Scordis said, it unfortunately reflects the worst of our society when we've seen the best of it over the last few weeks, and also over the last 15, 16 months. Councillor Scordis gave some good examples of the work the footballers have done in our team, and they brought communities together, particularly over the Euros. I've seen communities who may not necessarily have felt so drawn to the English football team before, suddenly feeling really invested in this group of players because of what they stand for. And I do think, though, just as a clarification, I think there's been a bit of conversation on social media where people have said, oh, they're so amazing, they don't deserve this abuse. Well, they don't deserve this abuse because they're individuals in our country, regardless of their footballing talents. The fact is they are people, and there are people who are not famous footballers who are walking our streets every day, who are seeing at their computers, seeing vile abuse, not necessarily about them directly, but about who they are. And I do feel it's important that at any tier of government, we should be calling this out and doing what we can to supporting those organisations, charities, community groups who are working to eradicate such hatred in our society. And so I do want to just make sure the language is important when we discuss racism. It's not because they achieved so well in the Euros that it's horrifying, it's because they're people themselves. And there'll be people in our communities right now who are feeling scared, and they're feeling worried about what they've seen over the last few days. And I do think it's important at a local level we call it out and do whatever we can to support them, including supporting this motion this evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Councillor Corey, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I support this motion and support celebrating the positives, but also condemning the discrimination and the negatives that we've seen. This team, as well as the women's teams in years prior, have shown excellent skill, but excellent leadership and inclusivity. The taking of the knee. It has become necessary to evacuate the wall
So we evacuate the building out to the skate park. There's a side entrance on the through the doors.
Please evacuate via the fire exit.
Councillor Corey.
Thank you, Mayor. As I was saying, I very much support this motion. We must celebrate the positives, but call out the negatives, especially speaking out against discrimination. This team, as well as the women's teams in previous years, have shown excellent leadership and inclusivity. Taking the knee is absolutely important, and I believe they have set a fantastic example, which they should continue to do so. Also, wearing the Pride armband, especially for someone like me from the LGBTQ+ community, is inspiring as well. So I very much support this motion and the articles within it that condemn the discrimination and racism of any form, and to show a lead to our borough that we call it out and we do not want to see it. I also want to condemn other parts that are associated with football, sadly. I'm a football fan and I enjoyed watching the team play with friends and with family. But we must work together with our partners in One Colchester and beyond to look at the issues around domestic violence at this time as well. As much as I absolutely wholeheartedly support the comments on discrimination in this motion, we probably should look at those other sometimes hidden impacts of the football. We know that 26 to 36% of increases in domestic violence incidents happen during the England games. So we do need to look into that as well and ensure that we encourage, educate, work with, support victims of domestic violence who suffer at the time during the England games. So let's celebrate the positives. Let's stand up to discrimination. Let's stand up to violence and also destruction that we see, not just in terms of violence, but in the streets as well, which we have seen in Colchester as well. So let's work together, let's celebrate what's good, and let's condemn what's bad. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Corey. So the next speaker, I believe, sorry, change pages, is Councillor of Oxford, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to associate myself with all the comments made thus far, but also I remember well 1966 when we had a football team who could get over the line with a manager, Alf Ramsey, who was absolutely exceptional. And the parallel with Alf Ramsey is the conduct and the way Gareth Southgate behaves, very much on a par with the likes of Alf Ramsey. Obviously, the discrimination that's come about, racist discrimination come about because 3 of the players failed to score their penalties, is disgusting and unnecessary. And it's not acceptable in any shape or form. We've had players before them who have missed penalties, Stuart Pearce, Gareth Southgate himself. And I remember David Beckham at one stage in the World Cup getting sent off early in a match, and he was condemned for ruining England's chances of the World Cup. But they weren't targeted for racism. It's just totally not acceptable. And it's been good to see the response in Manchester to the graffiti and so on put on Rashford's painted wall there, and that's really come out really well. And I know he's made comments that he's really been touched by that. As for discrimination, obviously well aware of discrimination, and I'd just like to add, and it's not football related, but more disabled people have died through COVID-19 than any other sector of society. So we should be wary of anything that is racism, discrimination, anything like that. But thank you very much. I just think the team did really well. My summary of the match was England won the first half, Italy won the second, and the extra time was about equal. So it was ended up with down to, effectively 1 penalty in it. And I just think they've done us proud, and let's carry on supporting them as they go forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we have Councillor Gocher for the Green Party.
Thank you. I thoroughly support the motion,
and I thank Councillor Scordis for bringing it forward. I've also been enjoying the football, but we need to be fully aware that there is a problem with football, and this is why players take the knee before matches. It isn't just gesture politics; it's in acknowledgement of a real problem with a very small minority of fans of football. And the racism that we've all heard about over the last few days is just one part of this. I fully concur with Councillor Corey's comments about domestic violence. I mean, personally, I have heard racist chants at football matches, but not for a long time. But I have heard them when Leicester played at Layer Road, I heard them. It is important that all civic organisations and councils condemn this. You know, I welcome Gareth Southgate's leadership of the team and this current team and its stance on inclusivity, but there is still a long way to go with football to get rid of this completely within that minority of fandom. It isn't just racism, it's also homophobia. Some of you might well be old enough to remember when Justin Fashanu came out in the early 1990s, and there was a backlash against him. I am not aware of another Premier League footballer since who has come out. I might be wrong on that, but I am not aware of it. I am aware that there was a letter to, I think, a newspaper about a year ago from a Premier League footballer saying he was too scared to do so, even now, and wouldn't reveal his identity. So there is a problem with football, and it is important that we as an organisation join with everybody else across the country who's condemning the racism, the discrimination, the domestic violence, and all of those problems, and that we support all efforts to eradicate them from football. Thank you.
So, yes, Councillor Scordis, you have 3 minutes to sum up, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I wanted to pick up on the point of homophobia, discrimination there, because Councillor Corey mentioned it as well. And recently at a game, a young fan tweeted, as a gay young man, I'm attending my first football match, never thought I could, had a great time. And then Jordan Henderson, not even playing that game, found that tweet, retweeted it and said, glad you enjoyed the game. No one should feel that they can't enjoy football. Football's for everyone. That is the caliber of players we have today. Anyone who knows football 10 years ago, I doubt we would have had players doing that. So there is progress. There is one player who's come out since called Thomas Hitzelsberger, but he waited till he retired. So that's a powerful point that footballers aren't allowed to express their identity as it is, and the statistics are stark. There are clearly gay footballers out there who are too scared to come out. So my final message really is to quote Edmund Burke, which is the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. So the challenge here for everyone here is to challenge, call out this kind of language, but also challenge our own prejudices. We don't know everything in the world. It can be a scary world out there. Learn. I know some people have an issue with taking the knee, but maybe listen to why some of those people are taking the knee. It's not a Marxist conspiracy as some have considered. There are a reason why white players are doing it alongside their black players. So listen and make sure that you challenge and challenge yourself as well. And hopefully we can get a unanimous vote, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Yes. So I think we've got consensus across the floor. Can we use a hand vote, please, to vote for Councillor Scordis's motion? Those in favour.
That's unanimous, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, and we should be proud that it is unanimous. It's a very important subject. Personally, I am concerned that it all seems to be getting worse rather than better, and I do wonder how much social media and the ease that people can express themselves it must make it worse, and that needs tackling too. And I know the government talk about it, but yes, we should all take some of that responsibility and be responsible when we're submitting tweets and texts and things like that. So We now come on to questions to Cabinet members, and we've had quite a few submitted ones, which is good because the councillors, hopefully the portfolio holders, will give us a full response. So the first one, Councillor Julie Young, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The safety of young women in our town has to be one of our highest priorities. I applaud the additional investment in safer streets work, and investment can't come soon enough. However, while public money is being invested in more surveillance and lighting, it would appear that our most prestigious school has been rated as requiring improvement. Largely, it seems down to a culture of boys will be boys, encouraging boys and young men to have an entitled attitude and turning a blind eye towards rape culture. I'm sure the news has come from Scarlett, Mansfield and Ofsted has shocked us all. I ask the Leader of the Council to write to the head teacher expressing our concerns over this matter. In addition, I ask the Leader of the Council to consider the roles and opportunities in this authority and the scope for allowing greater power for women members. I remember the town deal announcement, 5 men featured. I note that the biggest project this authority is about to deliver, the tendering Colchester Borders Garden Community, will once again have a board of stale male and pale representatives. Entitlement starts at a young age. We must do all we can to level the playing field and promote gender equality by offering roles to women to act as role models to our daughters and granddaughters.
Thank you. And Councillor Dundas, would you like to respond, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Young for the pre-notification of the question. I certainly join with Councillor Young in welcoming the investment in safer streets with a priority on the safety of women in particular. In addition to the investment already announced, we have been working with the PFCC to secure additional investment for Colchester, and we hope to be able to announce some good news on that soon. On the Ofsted report referred to, I agree it is very shocking, and I will certainly write to the head teacher expressing our concerns. From the public statements I have seen, they intend to take swift action, and we must make sure they do. With regard to the final comment, I also share her concerns that looking around the room, whether the Council of 2021 is truly representative of Colchester of 2021. It is noticeable that all but one group leader is male, and in fact, with a recent change in the Labour group, the ratio has got worse. How we actually bring about that change is a big subject, but we must encourage more women and more people of different backgrounds in the borough to put themselves forward as councillors and for roles of responsibility. We have had member development meetings in the past where all group leaders have expressed how hard it can be to find candidates. And if we are to encourage people, then we need to make sure it is something they are likely to enjoy doing. To do that, we probably all need to moderate our behaviour sometimes and think before we speak or tweet. Recently, a female member of the cabinet was quite cruelly ridiculed on social media by another councillor. And when that happens, is it any wonder that people considering putting themselves forward for these positions stop and think, no, thank you very much. There are other ways that I can contribute to my community without having to put up with this sort of rubbish. I'm not standing in a glass house here. I'm sure anyone can find examples of Conservatives in the past who have overstepped the mark. But I have noticed a disturbing trend that some of the crueler and more unpleasant behaviour has been aimed at women councillors. Continuing with the footballing analogy, if we want a wide range of people to put themselves forward in future, we must make sure we play the ball, not the person. As regards TCBGC, Councillor Young is correct that the members are pale and male. I won't comment on the relative degrees of stale amongst them. I notice that the opposition has also appointed someone of this category as their observer, and it is perhaps a surprise that Councillor Young did not continue herself. Maybe on the stale front, perhaps we should look at the US 2-term system only, where councillors serve 8 years maximum to keep people fresh. I don't know how much support that would get here, but it may be worth thinking about. But in all seriousness, I do agree. It is vital that we do what we can to encourage role models, and I'm always very happy to work with her and indeed anyone else in or outside the council to do that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dundas. So the next question we have is, sorry, have you got a supplementary, Councillor Young?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of not so much of a supplementary, but a comment really, if I may. I welcome in the answer to the question that I have received, and I really do think it is a topic that we do need to debate here in Colchester Borough Council in terms of our behaviours, how we can foster a culture where more women do want to join us, because as the leader of the council said, it's really difficult to get women to step forward into these roles. But I think it would send a really strong signal if we are putting women forward at some of the announcements that are made to make sure we have a diverse representation and that there is some gender equality. I do urge all members of the council to read the Ofsted report. I do urge them to read the comments made by Scarlett Mansfield, because as I rightly say, we're spending a lot of money on lighting and surveillance, but it starts with education. And finally, Mr. Mayor, I know that there are a number of old Colcestrians that are in this chamber this afternoon, and I urge them to use their powers within that forum to bring about change at the school.
So I note your question, Councillor Young, but I don't think Councillor Dundas is going to answer it. Thank you. Councillor Harris, we have a question from you, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. It is to Councillor Ellis, the portfolio holder for housing and planning. And I'm very much of the mind, Mr. Mayor, to ask it with the fear that we've all got on increasingly worrying about climate change. So this is trying to do something positive for that. Could I ask what Colchester Borough Council is going to do about electric plug-in points for electrical vehicles in public places? And can Colchester Borough Council add to its planning policy to ensure that plug-in points are included in all settings? Thank you.
Councillor Ellis, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Harris, for the courtesy of a pre-notified question. I think the first part of your question probably sits in a colleague's portfolio, but I do have an answer for you, having obviously asked officers. An electric vehicle charging strategy for Colchester activities is being worked on, aligned with work by Essex County Council. This needs to be considered more holistically in terms of the market trends, future demands, and consideration of matters such as power consumption, cost, duration of stay at different venues, distance cars can travel on a single charge, and rapidly changing technologies. Notwithstanding the ongoing strategy work, electric vehicle charging points, or EVCPs, are already considered in all major capital projects that result in refurbishment or redevelopment by the council. This has been the case for some time now. For example, as a direct developer of a site, 4 EVCPs were installed at the new Northern Gateway Sports Park. Originally approved for 2, but the council then doubled the number in early construction stages. There are already charging points at adjacent sites at Junction 28, such as the BP, which has at least 1 fast charging port as well. There are 18 EVCP sockets planned for Rowan House that will be reserved for our fleet vehicles, but with some capacity for staff and visitor charging. This comes alongside the wider improvement to the heat and energy system to the building and part of a holistic climate change approach that goes beyond charging points alone. Other developments the council is involved in, but not directly building, for example, the Turstone Leisure Multiplex at the Northern Gateway, were also approved with EVCPs as part of a wider sustainable transport strategy. There will be 8 when that first opens, with further infrastructure to increase that to nearly 100 if demand is demonstrated. And in terms of a wider rollout at CBC car parks, we are also working on an OZEV, which is an electric vehicle funding bid. This will need a feasibility study, but will aim to deliver EVCPs at 4 to 5 of our car parks to increase the facilities for residents and visitors. So that's that part of the question. Turning to the planning policy, there are several references in the emerging local plan. I'm happy to read those off for you if you'd like to, or I can send them to you, Councillor. It's fairly long. Section 1, paragraph 6.4, It's included in there that we will measures designed to encourage people to make other sustainable travel choices, such as better public transport, car clubs, electric vehicle charging points is in. Section 2, paras 1555, 15113, policy DM 21, para 15121, paragraph 15122. Again, you know, with the growth in electric vehicles, owners will need to have suitable infrastructure to recharge vehicles. Infrastructure needs to be installed at a variety of locations to enable effective recharging. Different charges will be needed, such as slow, fast, or rapid, depending on location and target market. It's something that's very much on the authority radar. I know we haven't gone quite as quickly. We obviously weren't the administration, but we haven't gone quite as quickly as some neighbouring authorities. And I know that family of mine have gone off to Nayland, I was told the other, no, not Nayland, Sudbury the other day, and parked for free and charged their car. And it would have been the same sort of price as parking in Colchester, but they were able to charge their car at the same time, something we need to look at. I can send you plenty more information. I'm quite happy to send you all of this in writing if that would help, Councillor Harris.
Councillor Harris, do you have a supplementary question, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much to the portfolio order for spending the time, which is, I think, very well spent time in this very important subject. And the supplementary is, would the Cabinet and the whole Council work with the comms team and the local newspapers, etc., to promote exactly the things that have just been talked about by the portfolio holder? Because I think we all, as a man and woman in this room, need to get behind those issues and make a change that can happen in the next few years. And I'd love the comms team to actually start promoting that with the Cabinet if they could do that. Thank you.
So the question was?
To work with the comms team, would the portfolio holder and the Cabinet work with the comms team to promote all the things you just illustrated?
I certainly don't have a problem with that at all, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. So, Councillor Harris, you submitted a second question.
I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. And the second question is also on the subject of climate change and planning for the future. You'll see there's a theme here. The investment in the Colchester via the Active Travel Fund was, I think, something that we all clapped and applauded and welcomed. But would the leader of the council agree with me that the removing of Monkwick, which was in the original plan for that, was a missed opportunity to play a real and meaningful part in climate change for South Colchester residents?
Councillor Dundas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Harris for the pre-notification. Before I answer this question, I just need to apologise for the technical issues, which meant I couldn't hear his and some other contributors' comments properly at Cabinet. They were resolved during the meeting. With hindsight, perhaps we should have adjourned it, although that might not have been very popular, bearing in mind people were for some reason trying to get away by 8 o'clock. But I think we need to learn from that, and if we've got a problem in future, that's what we'll do. To answer the question, in the original town investment plan prepared and submitted to government in October 2020, we included proposals for livable neighbourhoods at Grinstead, Newtown, Barnhall, Monkwick and Prettygate. Unfortunately, the award from the government announced in March 21 was £18.2 million, less than the 25 million bid value, or in fact 6.8 million pounds smaller. The Town Deal Board then had to undertake a process to prioritise projects within the programme, ensuring that the programme was still able to deliver projects effectively across all its 6 intervention themes. Consideration was also given to the ability of projects to leverage co-funding and to potentially draw from other funding sources available later. Specifically, the livable neighbourhoods theme, the decision taken was to retain one livable neighbourhood, which will form an integral part of the Heart of Grinstead Town Deal project. The longer term intention is then that this livable neighbourhood may serve as a pilot for further such schemes in Colchester. Therefore, the other livable neighbourhoods, including Monkwick, remain in the town investment plan with the ambition that they will obtain the necessary funding as soon as possible. Obviously, I would have preferred all the projects to have gone ahead immediately, but I can reassure Councillor Harris that the intention remains to achieve the full 25 million and implement the Monkwick active travel plan.
And do you have a supplementary question for that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much, the Leader of the Council, for that very good answer. Would the Leader of the Council note, please, and note that Councillor Warnes, Councillor Pearson and myself will play a very active part in supporting him in that act if he can bring that forward, because we know that the Beerchurch residents would very much like to play ball with him and work towards those aims. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we'd now like to welcome Councillor Cox asking her first question.
Thank you very much, especially as a woman present in the proceedings. Wonderful. My question, as indicated on the supplementary agenda, concerns an aspect of the government's proposals for planning reform. My first 2 months as a councillor, I've already had a steep learning curve on planning issues and a number of residents raising planning issues with me. So I've already understand this is the meat and drink of local democracy. My question, as you can see on the order paper, concerns the proposal to remove local residents' rights to object to planning applications in their own neighbourhood if the area is zoned for growth or renewal. And I'd like to know the portfolio holder for planning's view on that proposal, please.
Councillor Ellis, please.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Dr. Fox for having the courtesy of
it's Cox.
Cox, sorry, I've written Cox down and I do apologise for having the courtesy of pre-notifying me your question. As a member of the local plan committee which fed into the CBC consultation response, which I entirely agree with, I think it appropriate to selectively quote from that response, if I may. In fact, the committee kindly agreed to use 3 words that I came up with for in reference to the current planning system, which is "it's not broken." As you weren't a member at the time, I hope this is helpful, and I will go on after this. We said we welcome any changes that engage the community and help make planning more community-led and democratic. However, the council is concerned that by reducing consultation during the planning application stage, particularly, could disadvantage some from being involved. The white paper does not provide a single new right for community participation or a single new opportunity for democratic involvement in the plan-making process, but rather reduces both rights and opportunities to participate. With regard to the question about automatic outline planning permission in growth areas, assuming the government pursued zoning, which I also incidentally disagree with, we said no, we do not support plans for growth areas and automatic outline planning permission, which we feel goes against the aims to make planning more accountable to the local community. Permission in principle could reduce democracy as this eliminates consultation during the planning application process. Now, I've been a member of the planning committee. I was for many years before I joined the local plan committee. And in my opinion, anything which reduces or removes the rights or opportunities of communities to object or indeed support individual planning applications should be resisted. And therefore, yes, I agree that those rights should be protected. I hope that answers your question, Councillor.
Councillor Cox, do you have a supplementary question?
A very quick supplementary, if I may. So I think Colchester Borough Council seeks to send out the message that communities they can step up, they can take responsibility, they can support each other and so on. But if these proposals go ahead, and I'm glad to hear that there's not support for them here, in effect, we're saying that communities can't take responsibility for the decision making in their own areas. And my question would be, does the portfolio holder believe that livable neighbourhoods can be created through community consultation as well as through measures like the Town Deal Fund?
The answer to that is yes. And I'm sorry she feels, well, actually, no, she's right. There are some big issues with what's coming down the line potentially. I'm hoping some of it will get watered down because I think there's an awful lot of opposition to some of the things which are being spoken about, as you know. I definitely think that livable neighbourhoods can be created, and she will know or get to know that I'm a huge fan of neighbourhood planning, which is something that I would like to see more of, and hopefully in the next year or so we will be able to push more of that out to the communities.
And we now have Councillor Lilly, who has got 2 questions for Councillor Oxford.
Thank you, Mayor. My question is to Councillor Oxford, Beverley Oxford, portfolio holder for communities. Can the portfolio holder for communities please tell me how she is planning to deal with the grooming of children's drug gangs in Colchester. Now she and her cabinet colleagues have scrapped the youth zone, which is one of the best chances to tackle this issue and has the support of Essex Police and the Police Commissioner and his deputy.
Councillor Beverley Oxford, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Lilly, for your pre-notified questions. And I apologise for the long reply to this first one, but I think it is important for members to be aware of the exceptional work being done to protect our young people from abuse. But firstly, this is not my cabinet. I think Councillor Dundas might be a bit surprised at that. Youth Zone, I will lay out the facts, leaving out the political posturing being done by some. Having had a virtual tour of Youth Zone, who wouldn't want one? The Youth Zone has not been scrapped, not by this cabinet and not by me. The Town Deal, an independent body set up by the previous administration, has put it on hold. In the 2.5 years spent by the previous administration, no funding, capital or revenue was able to be allocated to this project. If you start something like this off, you must be able to continue with it, as a lot of people would be relying on it. No location was found. Britannia Car Park was ruled out due to the need for the parking revenue. The ethos of youth zones is for the location being in the area ward of significant deprivation. So a town centre location would be totally inappropriate. What is being done regarding grooming of children into drug gangs? School visits by the community policing team, raising awareness of knife crime and drug education assisted by the police education team. Police and social services attend multi-agency child exploitation cases are discussed and a coordinated approach is designed. The Raptor team targets county lines. Statutory and non-statutory agencies work with the police in safeguarding vulnerable children and target offenders. To assist this work, they utilise the National Referral Mechanism. Due to their efforts, a number of lines have been broken up. Other activities. 6,000 Year 6 pupils from 46 schools attended the virtual crew for drug and county lines awareness. This is enhanced by the .com, which also supports the personal, social and emotional development of young people. Operation Henderson is a joint initiative by Essex Safeguarding Board, Transport and Essex Police, to name but a few, to raise awareness of the potential exploitation of vulnerable children to abuse, with 600 licensed taxi drivers, posters in both town and Colchester Station, businesses and social media, all engaged in the protection of vulnerable children. Safeguarding sessions have been run for CBC frontline staff, taxi drivers, CBH staff, continuing to raise awareness and enable staff to spot and raise concerns on a number of issues. I hope this helps.
Councillor Lilly, do you have a supplementary question?
No, shall I move on to the second question?
You may.
As Councillor, it's to Beverley Oxford as well. How many hours have the zone wardens worked in the town centre in partnership with Colchester Police in dealing with begging and drinking in public in the last month?
Thank you for your second question, and this one will be quicker. 30 hours of joint patrols with street wardens and police. Joint operations, nights of action, 18 hours. With CBC licensing, bid, neighbourhood teams, plus the Operation Henderson. CBC has also led on enforcement operations for street drinking and cycling. Police community support officers are currently organising cycling and e-scooter enforcement days. Town Centre Action Plan, 4 hours. These are weekly meetings with Beacon House, the BID, probation, CVH, outreach and ASB teams to organise teams for the town centre areas and individuals of concerns. These meetings discuss plans and actions on various issues. COVID marshals, 600 hours across the borough, 260 in the town centre, and Operation Luscombe that supports rough sleepers and antisocial behaviour. I hope this helps as well.
Councillor Lilly, another question?
Well, actually, you've gone into great deal of detail there, which I already know about because at the TCAB meetings, I've already been knowledge of that. What I actually asked was about zone wardens. Not interested in the other stuff, but you said they work 30 hours only in a month. Now, this brings on to my second question. In the last couple of weeks, I've got a lot of time on my hands. I've spent time in the town and around the Castle Park. It's horrendous. Cyclists rushing around everywhere. There's people on those electric scooters, the black illegal ones, two up, going all over the place. People having them walk out of the way. In all my times of walk around town, I've not seen one zone warden around to take action. What's happened to them all? We had it all set up a few years ago to sort out all the problems in the town centre, and now it's been let slip. So please, can we have some more action in and around the Castle Park, dealing with the legal activity there? Clamp down on them all. People are just getting away with it. So please, thank you very much for your question. I'll leave it there.
Councillor Oxford, would you like to respond?
Thank you for raising these concerns with me, and I will do my best. But they are already organising enforcement days for the e-scooters and the bad cycling. But I will continue to raise your matters and get back to you with any information I find out.
We now come on to our final. Sorry?
Excuse me, Mayor. You actually missed a question in the middle, which to Councillor Crowe.
I beg your pardon, Councillor Lilly. You've been busy.
No, I've got so much time on my hands these days. I actually enjoy working in opposition, so it's actually wonderful. I don't have to sit there and listen to all the answers that the officers give, which I'm sure I've already heard before in the past. So, Councillor Crowe, sorry to keep you waiting. I'm sure it's worthwhile. Now that My Permanent app has been launched in the town centre, and it's a fantastic idea, as you know, I come up with it along with the officers in there. So actually, I stole it from a car park issue in Limerick in Ireland. So there we go. What work has now been done to sign all the shops up in the town centre and around it, because this is a great bonus to shoppers and they can actually get free parking if they sign up to this issue.
So, Councillor Crowe, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I nearly got away with not answering that one. So thank you for pre-notifying your question, Councillor Lilly. That's most appreciated. And thank you also for your ongoing interest and support of the My Permit discount scheme. Now, as you already know, but it may be of interest to members and anyone watching who doesn't know about it yet, the scheme is to encourage shoppers to use the council's My Permit app when parking in our town centre car parks. And it enables them to claim discounts off their parking stay when a QR code in the app is scanned with the device in participating businesses. The discount is deducted from the customer's My Permit charges for their stay, so they're only billed for whatever is remaining. If anything is, because it's possible that during one stay in town, a shopper can visit multiple participating businesses and end up not paying anything at all for their parking. And the whole scheme makes no impact on parking revenue to the council, as businesses are invoiced for the cost of the discount supplied. However, as with any new innovation, it's important we don't run before we can walk, which is why we're piloting it for a 6-month period initially. And for this pilot, we have enrolled 9 businesses who are currently signed up to the scheme, with 3 more to come. And during this pilot, we'll monitor the success at 3 feedback stages at months 1, 3, and 5 to guide our final rollout, which will be supported and aided by the bid. So we're not enrolling other businesses at the moment. We will be getting there. But it's certainly a fantastic idea, and one which I hope will help town centre businesses increase their footfall, increase their customer spend, and help this town recover from that financial hit it's taken during the pandemic and the lockdowns.
Councillor Lilly, supplementary, please.
So is there an officer working on this to go around to the shops, or is it being relied on to the bid to actually talk to the shops to get them to sign up to it? Or are they waiting for the shops to come to the council?
We're working jointly with the bid and approaching shops and businesses.
Thank you very much. So we now come on to the final pre-notified question, which is from the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is to the Leader of the Council, and it concerns democracy. The overall turnout at this year's Borough Council elections was under 34%. This ranged from under 20% in Greenstead Ward to 43% in Lexington and Braeswick. And I don't think that's anything to write home about. Nearly 60% not voting. Would the Leader of the Council agree with me that given these disappointing statistics, we as a council and political groups need to do more to encourage voter turnout and lobby the government through our MPs to drop its plans for compulsory photo ID at polling stations, which will only serve to suppress voter turnout and is pointless legislation to address a problem that doesn't exist?
Councillor Dundas, please.
Thank you, and thank you for the pre-notification of the question. Turnout at local elections is a concern we all share, I think. However, it isn't a new thing, with local election turnouts having hovered at an average in the 30 to 40% range for many decades. In fact, I actually looked out the turnout in 1974 in the first election, and it was a bit better. In a lot of places, it was significantly better at all. And I do certainly agree that it comes from anyone in local politics to try and improve this. As for voter ID, I have some sympathy with the view that voter fraud isn't a major problem in most of the UK. And what has been detected usually seems to be around postal votes rather than in person. However, I am not convinced that it will have a dramatic effect on turnout for who votes. The vast majority of other countries have some form of voter ID required, including 47 European countries, the UK being the odd one out. And most seem to generally have as high or higher turnouts in all elections as the UK. In addition, 33 out of the 37 countries in the OECD require it. If it does not cause an issue in all these countries, then I wonder why we should be too worried about it causing an issue in the UK, providing it is communicated properly. It is also about voters having confidence in the system. I've experienced many voters who have been quite angry that they were allowed to vote with absolutely nothing. So frequently had people say to me at polling stations that I could have been anyone. The reality is we are all used to having to show some form of ID in all sorts of things these days. We have also already UK experience of compulsory voter ID, and it's been required since being mandated by the Labour government in 2002 in Northern Ireland. I know it is often difficult to compare GB politics with NI, as there are always unique circumstances there, but the local election turnout there is still a lot higher than in the rest of the UK. So in summary, I do not believe it will have an effect on turnout, but implementation is the key. And if I feel it is not being implemented in a sensible manner, then I will certainly be making my views clear.
And a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I disagree with the leader's assessment that it won't have an effect on turnout, and I think he knows the reality behind why this legislation is being put forward. Is he aware that there have been no cases or even allegations of voter fraud in Colchester, certainly within the last 20 years, if not longer? Is he aware that many residents, particularly in wards where there is great deprivation like mine, residents don't have driving licenses or passports? And is he also aware that the provision of the photo ID, if people don't have such things like driving license or a passport will fall onto local authorities to provide? And does he think the government will provide the necessary funding for us to do that?
Which of those questions would you like him to answer?
All of them. It's an amalgam question, Mr.
Councillor
Mayor, of
Dundas.
which you've asked in the past, I seem to remember.
I'll try and do them in reverse order. I understand the government have made a commitment that they will cover the costs, and I agree that comes down to the implementation. As I mentioned, if it's not implemented right, then I certainly won't support it and will certainly air my dissatisfaction with it. The ID criteria, I understand it is quite wide. It is a lot more than a driving license or a passport. It includes pretty much a wide range of expired photo ID. And as I said, I do appreciate that we don't have compulsory ID in this country, and I'm glad we don't. It's certainly not something I'd support. But it just doesn't seem to have caused an issue in any other country in the world. I think the only other country which has a similar system to ours, where you just turn up, is Australia. Although they have compulsory voting, which perhaps is possibly a different debate. Although you do know that everybody's voted, I suppose, and perhaps you pick up 2 times. As I said in my answer, I have some sympathy that I don't think there is a big problem with voter fraud in Colchester. I've certainly never detected it. But it's not just about Colchester. And I don't actually think in 2021, it's actually going to cause a bigger issue as people think, as long as it's communicated and implemented right.
Right, thank you very much. I'm conscious that we've got over 20 minutes of question time left, but actually I've already got 8 names in front of me, and we have been going for nearly, including a break, we've been going for nearly 2 hours. So would you like a break of 5 or 10 minutes now? Can we, hands up for a break, please? Yep, that's enough. Okay, so we'll reconvene in 10 minutes time, which will be 8:05. Thank you. Councillors, if we could settle down, please, and go back to our seats. We've got 25 more minutes of questions, and I think we've got 11 or 12 names already. So we'll start with Councillor Hogg, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is to the portfolio holder for community safety. In the last municipal year, Councillor Mike Lilly and myself, following concerns with regards to antisocial behaviour, pursued the provision of a CCTV system on the Mooga and Play Park on Pondfield to the rear of the Oak Tree Centre. However, on the 17th of May, I received an email saying that for logistical and funding reasons, the CCTV would not be provided at this site. Well, at 9:20 last night, our concerns turned into a reality when two men approached a lone youth on the Mooga with the intention of robbing him. I'm informed that a knife was involved. The young man managed to run away, chased by the two men, who were luckily later detained that evening by the police following a previous robbery. The young man was very, very shaken by the experience, as you could expect, but this could have gone badly, badly wrong. My question, therefore, is to the portfolio holder: will the portfolio holder work with the Oak Tree Centre team and myself to explore ways in which we can get round both the logistical and funding issues and resolve this issue to provide CCTV systems to protect local families and young people at this location? Thank you.
I believe that will Councillor Beverley Oxford. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hogg. The answer is definitely. If I can be of any help, any assistance, please come to me, use me, and I'll do my utmost to help you.
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Hogg?
Only, Mr. Mayor, that I wish there was going to be money found to provide this system, working with the Oak Tree Centre if we have to work on a 50-50, 60-40 basis, a negotiation over funding. We need to provide this CCTV and hope the resolve is there, that we can resolve these issues, particularly in view of what happened last night.
That's noted anyway. So Councillor Barton next, please, for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question's for the Leader of the Council. I'm absolutely passionate about delivering a youth zone for young people of Colchester, particularly now that I've had a chance to study the data from those towns that do have this amazing facility. And I've seen the positive outcomes. For example, there's less antisocial behaviour, less crime, to name but two, but there are in fact many more. And I know, Leader, that you would like one because I heard you say so this week on BBC Essex, but the money has been allocated to upgrade the townhouse, a considerable sum in my opinion. And I feel this should have been allocated towards trying to deliver this youth zone. But could the Leader share with us what these transformational plans are, please? As I did work for the youth service and I feel this building is no longer fit for purpose. And I'm genuinely interested, what can be done to make it a destination for young people? Thank you.
Councillor Dundas.
Thank you. I think on the actual technical details, I think it's probably suitable for a written answer, but I will just pick up on some of the points. From memory, the money committed to the townhouse is £325,000. And that's a capital cost. That's obviously quite a different magnitude to 4 million plus the site for the youth zone. So it doesn't really get you much of a youth zone. Councillor Barton's quite correct. Having seen a youth zone, I was very impressed, not just with the facility, but moreover with the people running it and the people behind on side who back the schemes. But the Town Deal Fund, as Councillor B. Oxford said, and it's a shame that perhaps not all of the opposition were listening when Councillor Oxford was speaking, didn't get us all the way to the youth zone. I'm committed to try and find a way to doing it. It will mean compromises. It will mean compromises on a site. It will probably mean potentially the loss of some affordable housing. So we have to accept that as a council. It may mean the loss of some other revenue, and it may mean the loss of some other opportunities for that land. it will also need a serious conversation with the people of Colchester that if we commit between 500,000 and potentially up to 1.3 million a year of revenue expenditure on that, that will mean other things will have to be cut, like CCTV, because the figures do not add up otherwise. So we need across the council with all parties to have a very serious conversation about that if this is something we really want to do. But on the details of the townhouse, exactly what they're spending the money on and the £1 million being done jointly with ECC, I think that I have got in my briefcase here a long list of them all. It runs to about 28 pages, so I don't want to read them all out, but I think I will get a written answer over to the councillor as soon as possible.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary?
Just a comment, if I may, Mr. Mayor. I do think our priority should be investing in our young people, actually. And you say that isn't a significant amount. Obviously, it isn't in relation to what a youth zone costs. But the more we put in the pot, the more we can draw in other funding. So I would just want us to leave it on the table and really, it's something I believe we all want, that we work towards actually achieving this. It would be absolutely amazing. Thank you.
And the next question comes from Councillor Pearson, please.
Thank you, Mayor. This is to the Leader of the Council. At the annual meeting, one of your priorities was to review the operation of Council's waste service. I'm quoting from Colchester Conservative website. Can you explain to us when that will start, when it's likely to finish, and what the remit of that review will be?
Thank you. Well, firstly, I'm probably not the best person to answer it because it's not actually my portfolio, but I will do my best. I believe it's being looked at now. I think Councillor Crowe has started some work on that. It's a big project. It's probably the biggest service the council, and most complicated service the council offers. So I think I will wait until we've actually made some more progress on it, and Councillor Crowe can get back to council with a proper, more detailed answer than I can give.
Any supplementary?
Can I ask then, Councillor Crowe, when this will start and when you anticipate it finishing?
It will start as soon as possible and finish as soon as possible. We'd like to get this done as a matter of urgency.
Right, thank you. The next question is
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to ask two very brief questions of Councillor Lissamore and one of Councillor Dundas. They are short. But can I first of all offer an apology that a clarification whisper may have carried across the hall whilst Councillor Oxford was speaking. My apologies to her and any others. But as I say, I've got a blocked ear, Councillor Mayor, and I'm afraid that my judgment of sound is not very good today. To my questions, if I may. Councillor Lissamore, first of all, my apologies. I'm not giving you pre-notification. We talked at the last cabinet about locality budgets. Liberal Democrats, like everybody else, like them for their community. I assure you of that. But I do have a genuine concern that this was the only measure that members took in all our conversations, task and finish group included, that helped officers deal with the financial challenge. And so my question is, answer now or later as you wish, whether Cabinet looked at the impact of that, and it's a small sum, on the overall deficit in the year, and in particular, because I found it very difficult last year to have to accept this would happen, that we were going to be making people redundant. And 51k in itself is not a lot, but it's one or two jobs. Your view on that will be really helpful. And the second question really is an aside. Could you clarify youth zone funding? Because this is my point of clarification to my colleague. I thought I heard Councillor Oxford say that we had none. My understanding was that we had left 1.05 million in capital and 400k have been put aside in revenue. Again, I don't need an answer now, but an answer later would be good. Thank you. I'll get to my question, Councillor Dundas, if I may, Mr. Mayor, briefly in a moment.
I think I suggest we get answers for the first two questions first. Thank you. Councillor.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor King. We have found that the locality budget is probably the quickest and simplest way to get funding to those organisations that really need it. And this is especially important post-COVID, hence why we've increased it back to the original level following cuts made by your administration. Now we feel post-COVID is not the time to reduce funding to our communities. Some councillors do not like locality budgets, and we are all reminded here that we do not have to spend it if we do not wish to. However, £6,000 between all three borough councillors is a substantial amount, and I know we have used ours previously in Prettygate very successfully. We've funded schools, churches, community centres, our post office, as well as enhancing our green spaces by planting trees and bulbs. Your concern that increasing the budget back to the way it was may result in redundancies. I do not agree with that. Since we took control of the council, we have been looking at some of the previous administration's decisions and some of their priorities that they thought was important to the borough. We do not agree with some of those priorities, and therefore we think it is a priority to use this money to increase the locality budget back to how it was, especially post-COVID. Thank you.
Councillor King, do you have a supplementary for Councillor Lissamore?
Thank you. I'll leave it with Councillor Lissamore, but I would like to see what the latest position is on redundancies. It is a fact, if you make savings by taking people out of the organisation, then you add cost, then that doesn't help on redundancies. So perhaps a confirmation later, Mr. Mayor, would be very helpful, I think, for all members. Thank you. May I proceed to Councillor Dundas? And again, my apologies, Councillor Dundas, to you, although I gave you a heads up like Councillor Lissamore that I didn't give you the full question. As I really welcome what you and others have said tonight about the open door to a youth zone, which I and colleagues would continue to say is probably best achieved by working at this across all of the parties. But thank you for the assurances, to the extent you can give them, that you are. As Vice Chair of the We Are Colchester Board, can I just ask one question? And it's really important because we, at our best, would carry county with us, which is, did the board receive any data or analysis on the outcomes that the respective investments in youth provision would provide? This will matter now and later when we seek their support and help.
Councillor Dundas, please.
Thank you. I'll answer Councillor King's question. I'll also, if he'd like me to, I'll just pick up on a couple of questions he put to Councillor Lissamore. On the We Are Colchester board, I'll be absolutely honest, having only attended one meeting of that board, I don't know the answer to that. So I will ask the question and find out for you. I think it's a fair question to ask. On the revenue side, Councillor King is correct. At the moment, the MTFF still includes £400,000 per year. However, if you look at the bottom line on the MTFF, it's got a big gap in it. I think it's about 1.6 million, maybe more than that. In local government, we have to get that down to zero. So if we leave, and it goes back to the point I made on Councillor Barton's question, if we leave that money in, something else is going to have to come out. And it might be something quite painful, which a lot of councillors here on all sides really like. So I just think we have to realise that that is the case. The actual figure, the actual cost, I mean, there's 400,000 a year in there. I keep saying 500,000 just to explain the difference. Onside currently actually estimate, well, they estimate the annual running cost at 1.3 million. They believe that they can obtain up to 800,000 per year from other sources. Their actual believe that the net cost to a local authority is 440,000. However, that does not include capital repayments. So were we to borrow to build it, and we'd still need to borrow to build it, even with the 2.1 million from the town deal fund, if we'd got that, there will be extra repayments on top of that. There is also inflation. So that's the cost today. By the time it was actually built in 2 or 3 years' time, we know the way costs of things are going, it would have gone up. So let's call it around 500,000, maybe more. Obviously, the commitment from the other funders is usually sort of 2 to 4 years at most. So we also always have to bear in mind that should that fall short, this authority could be on the hook for up to 1.3 million. And it's important that all councillors understand that, because these things do happen. We've had these big projects in the past and we've said it's going to cost us X amount, and they've come out costing a lot more. So it's important we all realise what we're getting into. But yes, at the moment, it is still in the MTFF. So contrary to views, it's been axed, it's been shelved. Well, it hasn't, it's still in the papers. So it's still there. But as we go forward developing the budget, and I'm sure we'll have these conversations at various committees, including governance and audit, which we always look forward to, there will be some difficult decisions to make. Thank you.
Okay, is there a supplementary, please?
I just thank Councillor Dundas for the clarification.
In that case, Councillor Fox, please.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I've got 2 questions. The first question is to the Leader of the Council, and forgive that there was no pre-notification, but it's only come to light today. And it's in your capacity as being responsible for all the council's undertakings in terms of health and safety. We are all sat here in Leisure World today, keeping a 2-metre distance and wearing masks. And it's my understanding that from Monday, there will be no requirement for visitors to Leisure World to wear masks or keep any distance. And I just wanted to ask whether you thought that was appropriate in light of the increase in COVID cases skyrocketing locally. I've heard today from a local business that has had to shut down completely because they are all being asked to self-isolate, and whether you believe that getting rid of all those recommendations will encourage or discourage users of the council's leisure services.
Councillor Dundas.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's a good point. I think in terms of the actual operational nature of it, I will always have to defer to people who actually know how to run leisure centres. I'll be absolutely frank, I don't. They have to make those difficult judgments. I'm not sure what other leisure centres are doing. Obviously, there is a degree of competition we have with them and our finances. I'm not aware of exactly what's happening in terms of restrictions being lifted in terms of Leisure World. As far as I'm aware, we are trying to keep at least some in other council buildings. The officers may be able to confirm. But I trust the judgment of the people running our facility, I think.
Supplementary?
Just a supplementary comment, I suppose, and that's that I would like to think that all the council services would be operating to the same sorts of standards, so that in particular where we have a duty of care to our staff, that we're not putting them at risk in one location and not at another location. Thank you, Mayor. And for my second question, it's to the portfolio holder for Economy, Business and Heritage. At the last meeting of the Local Plan Committee, the committee unanimously agreed to support a proposal for Cabinet to look at the council purchasing the Abro site in order to secure it in perpetuity for the borough, considering its important nature as the home of the Roman circus, the only Roman circus in the country and in Northern Europe. And I wondered if he had any progress update for the council in terms of investigating the possibility of that.
Councillor Laws.
You're absolutely right to identify the importance of that site. You'll know, won't you, and for the benefit of the room, we now have a joint management plan for the Roman Circus site between Colchester Museum Service and Colchester Archaeological Trust. And it's a very aspirational plan. Colleagues at Essex Highways will probably be interested to note that it does potentially involve one day moving a road, and that is also interconnected with the site you speak of. I will get you tomorrow, the very latest, on where conversations are at with that site, as I don't want to give you wrong information this evening, but I will find out for you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Laws. I really appreciate that.
Right. No. Okay, in that case, we go to Councillor Scott Patel, please.
Thank you. I have two questions. The first to Councillor Lismore, the portfolio holder for resources. I'm pleased to see that the council are seeking to employ somebody to assist with planning enforcement, apparently as an apprenticeship. On first look, that's needed and commendable. On a closer inspection of the actual facts, it's quite clear that the advertised role brings with it more questions than answers. I asked further questions and was advised that the apprenticeship training lasts for 21 months. And after that, hopefully, Colchester Borough Council will have a role for the apprentice to move into when they have finished their on-the-job training. Hopefully, fingers crossed. And if not, what? A person who is trained to work in the planning department, but with no formal qualifications. I thought that was the whole point of an apprenticeship. So I'd like to ask these two questions, and I'm confident that colleagues across the floor will be able to give me straightforward answers. One, Colchester Borough Council is rightly proud to pay its staff the national living wage. In this case, they aren't. When did that change? And importantly, why? The second point is, would you agree with me that this isn't an apprenticeship as the job is advertised? The length of contract is a curious term of 21 months. The successful applicant will gain no formal qualifications and is far from assured of having anything permanent job-wise at the end of the term. Why is that? Thank you.
Councillor, is it going to be Councillor Laws perhaps for business, or is it going to be Councillor Dundas who's in charge of? Sorry? Oh, I beg your.
Thought it was to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank the councillor for the question, and I will certainly look into it and get a more detailed answer for her. But with regard to apprenticeships, with my husband's business, we've employed over the years many apprentices, and it is not normally standard practice to offer them a role at the end of the apprenticeship. We have to take into account what opportunities are available, what jobs are vacant at that particular time. And I don't think I have ever seen an apprenticeship where a job has been guaranteed at the end of that role. But I'd like to thank the councillor for the question, and I will get her a more detailed response in the near future.
Thank you very much. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do. When I was looking into this, one of the criteria for an apprenticeship is that I think it's 20%, I can't remember off the top of my head, is allowed for training and study time to get those formal qualifications. And I could not see anything in the job specification about that. So to me, it seemed that it was in-house training. So could the portfolio holder look into that point and confirm whether it is actually a job role, in which case it should be the living wage, in my opinion, or whether it is a true apprenticeship and there will be formal qualifications at the end of it? And also, could the answer be shared amongst the other councillors, please?
Councillor Lissimore, please.
Thank you. Again, apprentices have changed over the last few years to include a lot more on-the-job training rather than perhaps going to college and learning more there. Although, of course, that's an integral part of an apprenticeship. but I will get some detailed answers for the councillor and ensure that that is shared with every member. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I've just been passed a note that's saying time's up. I just wonder, we've got 6 names here. So I'm going to have a quick hands up as to 6 names. Do you wish to continue for those 6, or shall we call it a day? Names, extension first, please. Hands up for extension. And against.
Mr. Mayor, I was in mid-flow. I was halfway through my questions. Can I at least finish my questions, please?
The Constitution is quite clear. It is only meant to be 60 minutes. But it is up to me. Oh, thank you. I thought that was an order. So I'll tell you what, we'll cut through the middle and we'll have 3 more, and that's it. Thank you. So Councillor Scott Patel, if you'd like to complete your questions quickly.
I will. This question isn't as long, and thank you very much for this opportunity. My question is to the Leader of the Council, Councillor Dundas. Could you explain how and why the Conservative manifesto has been shared onto the Colchester Borough Council SharePoint system with links to the Colchester Borough Council website? This is an abuse of position, as my understanding is that the council email and SharePoint system must not under any circumstances be used for political purposes.
Councillor Dundas.
The short answer is I had no idea that it was or where it is or anything, but I'm sure our IT department can investigate. But if that's the case, I would agree. It shouldn't be there.
I could put our chief executive on the spot and ask whether he
you could do if you'd like to,
right.
But
I think what I'll ask for is a written answer to all councillors from our officers.
I did find it, and it is there, and it was posted on, I think, the 26th of May. It was up there on the 26th of May. I went into the councillor part of the system, and I wasn't looking for it, but it popped up. If it is there, and it was as of yesterday, will the leader apologise to council for the Conservative misuse of the council system, please?
I think we'll find out from the officers why and how it got there. I think that's the important thing. It may not be the leader's responsibility. Thank you. So we have a question from Councillor Willits, please.
Quick question to the leader. One of the last and most damaging decisions of the previous Lib Lab cabinet was to ignore the council's climate change emergency resolution and purchase 19 diesel-powered light trucks rather than electrically propelled versions, which everyone in the borough was expecting. The decision was WAS 00720, taken on the 27th of April 2021. While the Local Government Act 2000 gives Cabinet the right to ignore resolutions of the Council in regard to executive decisions, will the leader give Council an assurance that should this sort of situation arise again in any future procurement, which is clearly contrary to the Council's Cabinet emergency resolution, Cabinet will firstly seek the opinion, and of course it's non-binding, the opinion of Council before a decision is made?
Councillor Dundas, please.
Yes, I'm happy to do that. I mean, I appreciate, I'm not familiar with the technical details of the actual purchase. I know that there are challenges around obtaining some of the newer technology. I do know that we are about to place a contract for some genuinely electric and hybrid vehicles. But it is clearly, when we have the commitment to the climate change emergency, this is clearly not something we ideally want to be doing. So I'm quite happy to say that yes, if in future, if we are in a situation where we have to diverge significantly from that commitment for whatever technical reason, then I'm quite happy to consult full council.
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Willits? Okay, we'll move on to the next one, which is Councillor Scordis, please.
Yes, question to Councillor B. Oxford regarding her role with neighbour teams. It's been noticeable over the last few months that the teams have been struggling. It's little things, bins aren't being emptied, fly tippings being left, graffiti, so forth. I imagine all of us have noticed it. And I'm wondering what plans are afoot to essentially improve the service.
Okay, the reply, please, Councillor Beverley Oxford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your question. I have a portfolio holder meeting next week, and I will raise your concerns there, and I will get back to you with what the answers are. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Supplementary?
I'm just surprised you weren't aware of the concerns, because your fellow ward colleague was complaining on Facebook about the uncut verges, but look forward to hearing about the progress.
Good. And our final question of the evening, Councillor Gocher.
Thank you. Over the weekend, an article appeared in the Observer newspaper about Middlewick Ranges, and serious allegations were made in that article. One of the allegations was that the MOD, together with Colchester Council, had written their own ecological metric to get round national environmental rules and facilitate development on an ecologically valuable site. The insinuation was that there was collusion with Colchester Council, and I've also been informed that that there's a suggestion that a CBC ecologist was involved in this. Now, to my knowledge, there is no CBC ecologist. So my question is to Councillor Ellis, and I'm fully aware that this predates the new administration, but can he, or indeed anyone, shed any light into whether there is any truth in the allegations and insinuations in the Observer article? Thank you.
Councillor Ellis, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mark, for the question. I could go on. I've got about 4 pages on this, if you'd like me to do it for you this evening, or I can give you a written. I can give you a written response and share what I found out with you. The answer is CBC don't have an ecologist, no, but we do employ one as a consultant, and that is ECOS, which is the Essex Wildlife Trust ecological consultancy arm, and those are the people that we employed to work with DIO over a metric for Middlewick. So when the article talks about a CBC ecologist, they're actually talking about Essex Wildlife Trust. So you can imagine the surprise officers had, I think, on at the examination when Essex Wildlife Trust turned up to speak against the metric that their consultant had agreed with DIO on our behalf. So it's somewhat confusing. I've got the reason that the metric was altered, I gather, is actually to make the hurdle somewhat higher. You'll know, I think, that because I've said it quite publicly, that I've got some issues with biodiversity net gain in its current form. And indeed, I've actually asked that the local plan have an opportunity to take a really good look at it. But the idea, obviously, is that you can mitigate against the damage that you do through development in one part, in one place, by making it considerably better in another, hence your net gain. I'm really confused about the metric, having had a look at it. I'll be honest, I find it extraordinary that you can be pouring sulphur onto ground to acidify it, and that sulphur could go into a water course. Mr. Mayor will probably tell me that's not a problem. It sounds like it could be an issue to me. I find it extraordinary that they could be talking about using glycophosphate weed killers, which I think the ex-leader of the council made a particular point that this council didn't like. There's all sorts of things in here, and there are things that we need to get to the bottom of. I'm surprised actually my predecessor didn't jump on this after the examination, because it seems quite bizarre that we were paying a consultant to work on our behalf with the DIO to come up with a metric. And then one of their colleagues turned up at examination and spoke against us. It doesn't make any sense at all to me. And that's almost the thing that I really need to get to the bottom of, to understand how that can happen. But in the short answer is, yes, there was a bespoke metric, but the bespoke metric was to make the bar higher. The insinuation that Colchester Council colluded, I'd say no, that's not true at all. Colchester employed a respected consultancy company in Essex Wildlife Trust to advise us, and they were the people that worked with DIO on our behalf. And yes, the last part of your question, I think, is do we have an ecologist? No, we don't. It's Essex Wildlife Trust. So I'm quite happy to share far longer. I've got pages and pages of the explanation on the metric, but I don't think colleagues would probably enjoy listening to me for another probably 20 minutes. It'll take me to read through this.
I won't put that to the vote because I think you'd probably lose. But yes,
Okay.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Gocher?
No, just that I'd be happy to receive the written explanation. Thank you.
As would we all, Mayor.
Councillor Ellis, are you happy to share it?
I'm happy to share it with everybody. There's no,
Okay. All councillors will receive
I
it.
don't think we've got anything to hide here at all. So
okay. Sorry, we now move on to item 10, which is noting the schedule of portfolio holder decisions. Are they all agreed? Yep, thank you. Urgent items. You'll be pleased to know that are no urgent items, but I forgot to mention that today is the French Bastille Day, July the 14th, when they celebrate the storming of the Bastille. So on behalf of Colchester, I'd like to wish our residents in Avignon, our twin town, a bonjour and or bonsoir even now. So yeah, santé, and I hope your celebrations go well. I declare the meeting closed.